New business, I think we have one item here, which is consider to authorize Mark J. Byrne Partners LLP and Cordisco and Sally LLC to file suit against the manufacturer, promoters, and distributors of synthetic prescription opioid medications on behalf of Newtown Township. I will defer to the solicitor to possibly explain a little more, so you can let the public know what Newtown Township is getting involved in.
This is a proposed lawsuit that, if approved by the board this evening, will authorize the attorneys that you mentioned to file in the Court of Common Pleas of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, captioned at Newtown Township versus a number of large manufacturers, distributors, promoters, and sellers of opioids. And this is an action that is based on the current opioid crisis that not only Newtown Township but the rest of the country finds itself in the grasp of, and alleges that much like the cigarette companies back in the 50s and 60s who promoted these types of things, saying they were for the public benefit, knowing that they knew or should have known that they were not in the public benefit, that they were they would create a health crisis rather than help the health of people. Should have been aware of that and should not have undertaken those the manufacture, sale, promotion, and dealing with these opioids. Again, this is a complaint in law seeking monetary damages, unspecified, but enough to warrant a jury trial. And in discussions, I think that the board has established that Newtown ought to stand up and take its place amongst many other municipalities, including large cities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, etc., that are filing these types of suits to try to curb this, what it views as bad behavior on the part of the defendants. So that's what this suit is designed to do.
Very good. And just to let the public know, this is not a suit that we are financially obligated to be in. There's no cost to us.
That's correct.
And like you said, it's basically Newtown Township making a stand of principle against the opioids manufacturers and distributors because of the epidemic that's going on, and you know, families out there are affected. It may be our neighbor, maybe someone in our family that's affected by opioids, and that's basically why Newtown Township would want to be involved in this. Also, the financial gain may be minimal because of our situation. We are luckily not a playground for opioid abuse, thank God. So what we may be gaining financially may be nominal, but again, we're making a statement that we're standing up against these manufacturers, and hopefully it'll do something to regulate the industry a little bit more. Anyone else? That's all I have to say. Anyone else have a comment in regards to this?
Yeah, I do. Not to discount the current crisis going on, I think we can all agree that's a problem. I think going after the manufacturers is not the right thing to do, however. I don't think they're the cause of the issue. I think overprescription probably is, and there's probably some other issues as well. I think going after the manufacturers sends a message to those manufacturers: Newtown Township is not a friendly place for your business. Don't come to Newtown Township. Don't bring jobs here. Don't bring EIT to us. I think it's a bad thing to do. I think if there is anything criminal that was done, absolutely they should be gone after by federal or local, state law enforcement. I don't think we should be doing this in a civil suit. Yep.
I have a comment. I've long been a critic of the pharmaceutical industry. There are some obviously bad players, and some are not named in this lawsuit, including Purdue Pharma, which initiated this by selling oxycodone and telling physicians that it was absolutely not habit forming, and they lied. They knew about it, and they were, brought to court about it, and that's been going on for quite a while. So the overprescribing probably begins with the pharmaceutical companies who have lied to physicians or made it seem safer than it really was. No doubt these drugs are a real help to some people, but some people are prone to get addicted to them if they're overprescribed. They take too many of them, and there is no magic bullet that one thing's going to solve this problem. So I think that you start at the root of the problem, and I always said that the pharmaceutical industry should take some responsibility. And up until this point, they've been taking very little responsibility, I believe. And it may come down to these lawsuits to move them to action, like with the tobacco industry. And I only hope that even though we may only get the nominal funding, and I hope the money that does come from the pharmaceutical industry to us and to other municipalities are actually used to help increase the treatment of people who are addicted to opioids rather than being spent generally. I think that's how it worked with the tobacco industry. They had to, states were able to initiate anti-smoking campaigns, which really helped cut down on the smoking by especially children. So I would say that's why I would support doing this.
Mr. Madden, it might make you happy to know that Purdue Pharma is the first
sure.
one mentioned in this lawsuit, so that...
Well, I only wish there were other ones that
Sure.
were real criminal organizations. I won't name them, but...
Thank you, John.
We're on that list. No, they've been brought to court. The CEOs have been summoned to court. They're going to go to jail.
Very good. Anyone else have anything to say?
I do. I just wanted to say something responsible Kyle said. Newtown Township is far from the only township or state or municipality that is involved in this lawsuit. I don't think Newtown Township is going to be targeted by these companies not come here. I think that's unrealistic, and fortunately it's unrealistic. But we're one of hundreds, if not thousands, of townships and states across the country who are suing these companies for their just unethical and just appalling behavior when it comes to this epidemic. And I think they do have a strong part to play in this, if not the most important role to play in this epidemic. And it's a crisis of just epic proportions, and I think it's really important that we stand up and take a stand against that. And if there are any damages that Newtown has suffered, we don't really know yet what they are. We should be reimbursed for those, and I think it's appropriate.
Question, if we're not paying anything, who's paying the lawyers that were,
Well, it's on a
Authorized.
contingency
Contingency
basis. Whatever they win, that's...
whatever they can get out of the pharmaceutical companies, they're gonna keep some of it?
No, they'll get a percentage
Well,
of whatever awards
Yeah,
they
I
may
agree, I
receive.
didn't think it was all of it.
I mean, I think a suggestion in the past from Mr. Mack, I heard him make the suggestion that if we were to get anything, and again, we may get a nominal, who knows, $1,000. I'm not even going to make a figure, but whatever we get, I think Johnny had mentioned to put it to good use in regards to maybe either some classes or seminars to inform the people of the dangers of opioids, and also to put some set aside if we were to have to buy another supply of Narcan for the police. And I know we get some in regards to the emergency medical services, get them free from the county, but it's always nice to have maybe a stipend in there. So, I mean, whatever we were to get, we'll hopefully put it to good use to try to help this epidemic along in a safe manner. So, again, I don't see any downside to this in regards to us being on this lawsuit. I can only think that it's making a stand for Newtown and the people and the families of Newtown Township that may have been traumatized by this epidemic, so.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry, Dennis. As a person who has been closely connected to someone who's been affected by drugs, I think people don't fully recognize how prevalent this is, not just in the country, but in our community. If you look at those police reports that John mentioned, how much Narcan is being used by our police, that's the time they use that. Sometimes they go to an overdose and they don't have to use the Narcan. I know that the police have diverted people just to the hospital for treatment. There are a lot of things that come into play, a lot of expenses, a lot of programs, and a lot of possibilities out there that can be benefited by this kind of a lawsuit and by being funded. We don't even know what our damages are because we haven't really looked at it that carefully. But I would bet that there are a lot of places that we could put programs or educational opportunities or rehab or whatever, and our police time that we're paying for, certainly, that helps. They see this every day, I'm quite sure. So I think that we're fooling ourselves to think it's not that big a deal in Newtown and that we don't have costs or issues because of this epidemic. We absolutely do.
I do have a couple more questions. These altruistic uses that we would like to put the money to, what is the rate the law firm is getting? Is that, anyone know that?
Oh, yeah,
How much is going to the law firm, how much is going to go to the other issues?
well, I don't know about that.
It'll be a percentage. Do we have the engagement letter in hand? We don't,
So we don't even know what they're taking out of it?
Well, it'll be a percentage. The standard percentage, it will be 50% or less. I've never seen a contingent fee more than 50%. Generally, they are in the 30 to 35% range, maybe 40. That's the range that I've seen, and we would expect that would be the range that will be involved here. If and when we get the engagement letter and we are not pleased with the contingent fee proposed, we can certainly negotiate that with the law firm.
But we don't know the number now.
I do not know the number.
We have an idea of the range.
Up to half, right? Another question is the term promoters. What is that? You know what that means?
I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe it's referenced in.
I didn't hear what you asked.
Promoters. It refers to manufacturers and promoters and distributors of synthetic opioids. I mean, you're going after sales reps at Merck or Rep Pharmaceutical Companies?
No, they're not defendants.
Well, the general term promoters is what I have a problem with, too. It's
Okay.
pretty vague, right? Nobody knows what that is either. All right, that's it, thanks.
Okay, anyone else?
I haven't weighed in yet, so,
Very good.
and Linda spoke so eloquently about it, and John had all my talking points, so. No, I want to comment on my support for this. I just feel that we're on the right side of this issue, and we'd be on the side of the victims and the families and the people who are affected. And it also, I think our action will begin to hold the manufacturers and those who market them unscrupulously to account. And the other piece I thought was, by adding our name to this, we kind of helps reach a critical mass of townships and municipalities that at some point may force a settlement, that it wouldn't have to go to, full fruition of a lawsuit that gets litigated. It could just maybe force their hand to offer a settlement and do the right thing. So those were some of the thoughts, along with some of the others that have already been shared.
I'd like to make one other point about what Kyle said about pharmaceutical companies, their employees not living here. I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 17 years, and I know a lot of people in the pharmaceutical industry who live in Newtown, and I've talked to some of them, and they agree that, some of these companies should be held liable, and these companies are used to, being sued almost on a daily basis for a number of different reasons. But you got to understand that even employees of these pharmaceutical companies who are doing good things, who are trying to do good things for the other drugs that these companies produce, which really do help people. They don't want to see their companies in this field. That's why some companies, maybe even one that's on this list, have gotten out of the opioid business already because they don't want to get involved in a product that really is causing more harm than good. So a lot of the people who live here in Newtown are working on other products that are good for patients and don't have these kinds of terrible consequences. So I think they would agree. They told me they would support it, and so I think it's a good idea.
I do have one more question, sorry. I said I didn't. Do we know, does this law firm have experience in that area? Do we know?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's all.